In the distant reaches of the galaxy, on a planet that shimmered like a distant star, lived Princess Lyra. She was no ordinary royal. Her beauty and strength were spoken of in hushed whispers across the universe, and her status as a leader was unrivaled. But beneath the opulent robes and the golden crown lay a heart that refused to believe in the power of love. Lyra had been raised to see affection as a weakness, something that distracted from duty, something that made people vulnerable. The princess spent her days in the grand halls of the palace, with nothing but her thoughts for company. She kept her distance from those around her, always maintaining the cold and aloof exterior expected of royalty. Love, she believed, was for those who did not have the strength to stand alone. It was for the weak. She had seen it all. Lovers whose hearts betrayed them, families torn apart by misplaced affection, and leaders who faltered because of the emotional ties that bound them to others. Her own family had fallen victim to such emotions, and she was determined never to let them have the same hold over her. The people of her world admired her, revered her even, but none truly knew her. Lyra was a puzzle, an enigma, someone whose heart seemed closed off to everyone, including herself. The alien princess was used to being praised, flattered, and adored, but all of it seemed empty to her. She was never touched by anyone's gestures of affection, and though she often found herself alone in the palace, it didn't bother her. It was what she had chosen. However, all of that was about to change. One fateful day, a human named Alex arrived on her planet. His mission was simple: to observe and learn about the alien species, to study their cultures, and to form diplomatic relationships. Alex was different from the other humans who had visited. He wasn't intimidated by the princess's cold demeanor, nor was he overwhelmed by the power and grandeur of the palace. In fact, he seemed almost unaffected by her status. From the moment their eyes met, something shifted. Lyra saw the curiosity in Alex's eyes, a glimmer of something that intrigued her. Unlike the others, he didn't bow down to her or try to impress her with empty flattery. Instead, he simply offered a respectful nod, as if he recognized her as an equal. For someone who had grown up with people constantly trying to win her favor, Alex's indifference was refreshing, but it also left her feeling unsettled. She had never met anyone who was not in awe of her. As time passed, Alex's presence became a constant in her life. He would attend the royal gatherings, sit silently in the background, observing everything with an intensity that seemed to see right through her. Lyra tried to ignore him, tried to dismiss his presence. She refused to believe that a human, someone so beneath her in her mind, could have any impact on her. Yet every night, she found herself noticing him, watching him from across the room, wondering why he never looked at her the way others did. He wasn't afraid of her, nor did he try to charm her with his words. He was just there. At first, she thought it was a mere curiosity on his part, something fleeting. But as the days passed, she realized something else. Alex was persistent. He wasn't here just for diplomacy. He was here for something else entirely. Each night, as Lyra wandered through the grand halls of the palace, she would often see him standing near the windows, gazing out at the stars, his thoughts seemingly distant. He never approached her directly, never asked anything of her, but somehow she could feel his presence lingering. One evening, as she walked through the royal gardens, she found him standing there once again. The soft hum of the alien flowers and the distant rustling of the leaves filled the silence between them. He was watching the stars as usual, but this time he turned to face her as she approached. His eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, there was a strange tension in the air. "You never asked me why I'm here, Princess," Alex said, his voice calm and steady. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Why would I ask such a question?" she replied, her tone cold. "Humans have no place in my world." Alex's expression didn't change. He wasn't offended by her words, nor was he discouraged. Instead, he smiled slightly, as if he had expected this response. "I'm not like the others," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't need to earn your approval or your affection. I just wanted to know who you really are, Princess Lyra, Lyra's heart skipped a beat. How could he, a mere human, claim to know her better than anyone else? How dare he speak to her this way? Yet there was something about his words that stung her pride, something that made her uncomfortable in ways she didn't understand. "You think you know me?" she asked, her voice cold as she turned away from him. "You know nothing about me." But Alex didn't take offense. He merely stood there, silently watching her retreat into the shadows of the night. It was then that Lyra realized something. She had never been truly seen before. People had admired her from a distance, yes, but no one had ever really looked at her the way Alex had, without fear, without expectations. He had seen past her title, past her walls, and that terrified her. As the night stretched on, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling of his gaze lingering on her, the quiet strength in his presence. For the first time, she felt a strange pull, a force she didn't understand, but she refused to acknowledge it. She couldn't. She wouldn't let herself be vulnerable. But deep down, Lyra knew something had changed. The princess who had once been certain of her beliefs, who had declared that love was weakness, now stood at the edge of something she couldn't control. The question was no longer whether Alex could affect her, but how long she could keep running from the inevitable. And so, with every passing night, the princess found herself slowly, reluctantly, drawn into the orbit of a human she had vowed never to care for. Days passed, and the sense of unease that had settled in Princess Lyra's heart refused to fade. Every time she walked through the palace halls, her thoughts seemed to circle back to Alex, the human who had managed to slip past the walls she had spent so many years building. It irritated her. She had never let anyone get close to her like this. She had always maintained control, kept everyone at arm's length. Yet here was Alex, a mere human, effortlessly breaking down the barriers she had so carefully constructed. She could feel his presence in the palace, even when he wasn't physically around. It was as if the air had changed. He didn't try to win her over with words or gestures, he simply existed. His quiet confidence, his calm demeanor, it all made her feel something she had worked so hard to avoid. It made her feel vulnerable. For someone who had been taught to avoid affection at all costs, this was a terrifying experience. But she couldn't deny it any longer. Something was happening inside her. Every night she found herself thinking about him, imagining what it would be like to be near him, to hear his voice without the usual cool distance between them. It was unsettling. For years she had convinced herself that love and affection were weaknesses, distractions that had no place in a world built on strength and power. But now, with Alex's presence haunting her thoughts, she began to wonder if she had been wrong all along. One evening, as she stood on the balcony of her chambers gazing out at the stars, she heard footsteps behind her. She didn't have to turn around to know who it was. She could feel his presence before she even saw him. Alex. He had come to see her again, just as he had every other night. But this time she didn't feel anger or frustration. This time, she was simply curious. He approached her slowly, his movement steady, unhurried, as if he had all the time in the universe. "Princess," he said quietly, "I've noticed that you've been distant lately. Is something bothering you?" Lyra turned to face him, her expression cold, but deep down she was startled by how his words resonated with her. How had he noticed? She had been careful not to show any signs of weakness, to keep her emotions hidden, yet somehow he had seen through it all. "I am not bothered," Lyra replied sharply, her tone defensive. "You are mistaken if you think I need your concern." Alex didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer to her, his eyes soft yet full of determination. "I'm not here to make you feel weak, Lyra. I'm just trying to understand you," she scoffed, her pride flaring up in an instant. "Understand me? You think you can understand me? You're just a human. You know nothing about what it means to be me, to live this life." For a moment, Alex was silent, his gaze never wavering from her. His words, when they finally came, were calm and simple. "I don't need to understand your entire life, Lyra, but I know that you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. His words struck her harder than she expected. She had always been alone, even surrounded by people. Her role as a princess meant that she could never truly connect with anyone. She had built walls around herself, keeping others at a distance, telling herself that it was for the greater good. But now, here was Alex, a human, telling her that she didn't have to carry that burden alone. For a long time, she had refused to admit that she longed for something more. She had dismissed love as unnecessary, as a distraction from her duties. But deep down, she had always craved connection. She had always wondered what it would be like to feel truly seen, to have someone stand beside her without any expectations. She turned away from him, her hands gripping the balcony's railing as she tried to push the thoughts away. She couldn't afford to be weak. She couldn't afford to let him in, but Alex's voice broke through her thoughts once more. I don't need you to love me, Lyra. I just want to be there for you. You don't have to be alone anymore. His words lingered in the air between them, like a soft whisper that refused to fade. Lyra clenched her fists, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't let herself fall for this. She couldn't let herself be swayed by the simple kindness of a human. She had spent too many years convincing herself that she was strong enough to stand alone. Yet here she was on the brink of something she didn't understand. She faced him again, her expression cold, but her voice was softer this time. Why do you keep coming back? Why don't you just leave me alone? Alex smiled, a small but genuine smile that warmed something inside her. Because I believe in you, Lyra. I believe that you're more than what you've allowed yourself to be. And I believe that you're capable of more than you know. Her heart skipped a beat. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever seen her for who she truly was beyond the title of princess. No one had ever cared to know the person behind the crown, but Alex did. For the first time in years, Lyra felt a crack in the walls she had built around herself. She had always thought that love was a weakness, but now she wasn't so sure. Was it possible that the very thing she had rejected for so long was what she needed the most? She stepped back from the balcony, her heart racing. I don't know what to do with all of this, she admitted quietly. I don't know how to let you in. Alex nodded, his eyes full of understanding. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but you don't have to do this alone. I'm not going anywhere, Lyra. I'm right here. And for the first time, Lyra didn't feel so alone. She had always prided herself on being self-sufficient, but in that moment, she realized that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry the weight of the universe on her shoulders. Maybe it was okay to let someone else in. The walls she had spent so long building were beginning to crumble, and despite her fear, Lyra couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to finally let love in. Lyra lay awake in her bed that night, staring at the ceiling of her royal chamber. The pale light of the distant stars shone through the open window, casting soft shadows across the room. But despite the quiet calm, Lyra's mind was far from peaceful. The thoughts she had tried so hard to ignore now seemed impossible to silence. Every word Alex had spoken, every moment they had shared echoed in her head. The walls she had so carefully constructed around her heart were beginning to crack. She had always believed that love was a weakness, something that made people vulnerable. It was an idea instilled in her from a young age. Love was a distraction, something that could ruin a leader. Yet here she was, questioning everything she had ever known. Alex had come into her life like a force of nature. He hadn't tried to impress her with grand gestures or empty words. He hadn't bowed down to her or treated her like royalty. He had simply shown up, quietly persistent, offering her something she hadn't even known she wanted: companionship, understanding, and a kind of love that asked nothing in return. At first, she had resisted it. She had told herself that it was nothing, just a passing moment, a fleeting connection that would fade. But as the days turned into weeks, the truth became harder to deny. She was drawn to him, despite herself. His presence in her life had become something she couldn't ignore. He wasn't like the others. He didn't see her as a princess but as a person, and that terrified her. She had always prided herself on being strong, on being independent. She had never needed anyone. She had always been the one who stood tall, who made the hard decisions, who never showed weakness. But now, with Alex in her life, she was starting to feel something she had never felt before: vulnerability. As she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Lyra couldn't help but wonder, what was it about Alex that made her feel this way? Why couldn't she stop thinking about him? Every time he was near, her heart raced and a strange warmth spread through her chest. It was a feeling she had tried to suppress, but it kept returning, stronger each time. The worst part was that she didn't know how to deal with it. She had never allowed herself to feel this way before. She had always kept her emotions in check, refusing to let anything distract her from her responsibilities. But now, with Alex constantly on her mind, she felt torn. Part of her wanted to push him away, to maintain her distance and protect herself from the emotions that were threatening to overwhelm her. But another part of her, a part she hadn't acknowledged until now, wanted to let him in, to embrace the feelings she had been denying for so long. Her heart and mind were at war. Every time she looked at Alex, she felt a pull, a connection that she couldn't explain. It was as if there was something deeper between them, something that went beyond words or logic. And yet, every time she let herself feel that connection, her fear kicked in. She had spent her entire life building walls to keep others out. To let someone in, to allow herself to be vulnerable, was unthinkable. But every night, when the palace grew quiet and the stars shone above, she found herself thinking about Alex. His quiet strength, his unwavering patience, his belief in her. It all weighed heavily on her heart. She could feel herself being drawn to him, and that terrified her. She couldn't afford to be weak. She couldn't afford to let love change her. Her people depended on her. She had a duty to her planet, to her family, to her people. How could she risk everything for something as fleeting and unpredictable as love? Yet, despite her fear, there was something inside her that longed for the connection Alex offered. She had spent so long pretending that love didn't matter, that she didn't need anyone. But now, for the first time in her life, she realized how wrong she had been. Love wasn't a weakness. It wasn't something that would make her fall. It was something that could make her stronger, something that could give her the strength to face the challenges ahead. The struggle within her continued. Every time she saw Alex, every time he spoke to her, she felt the walls she had built around. Her heart began to crumble. She wanted to push him away, to protect herself from the feelings that were bubbling up inside her. But at the same time, she felt a deep, undeniable desire to let him in, to stop fighting the emotions that she had buried for so long. One evening, as she wandered through the palace gardens, deep in thought, Alex appeared once again. She had been avoiding him for the past few days, trying to figure out what to do with the turmoil inside her. But now, as she looked into his eyes, all the confusion and fear seemed to melt away, replaced by something softer, something warmer. "You've been avoiding me," Alex said, his voice gentle but firm. Lyra turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had tried so hard to keep her distance, but it was becoming harder to ignore the pull between them. "I don't know what to say to you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'm feeling, and it scares me." Alex stepped closer to her, his gaze soft but unwavering. "You don't have to have all the answers right now, Lyra. You don't have to figure everything out. I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to be afraid of what you're feeling." His words were like a balm to her wounded heart, soothing the pain and fear she had carried for so long. For the first time in her life, she felt like she didn't have to carry everything on her own. She could let go just for a moment and allow herself to feel what she had been trying so hard to suppress. As the night sky stretched out above them, Lyra realized something. She didn't have to be alone. She didn't have to keep running from the emotions that had been building inside her. And maybe, just maybe, love wasn't the enemy she had always thought it was. With Alex by her side, She could face the struggles ahead, not as a princess, not as a leader, but as a person. And, for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to take a step forward, not in fear but in hope. As the days passed, Lyra found herself facing a new reality, one she had never imagined. The walls that had once kept her so tightly locked away were beginning to crumble. With each passing encounter with Alex, the alien princess felt herself changing in ways she had never anticipated. She had always believed that love was a weakness, that it would cloud her judgment and distract her from her duties. But now she wasn't so sure. It wasn't as if she had suddenly become someone else. She was still the princess, still the strong, capable leader of her people. But now, something inside her had shifted. The emotions she had once rejected were no longer things to be feared. They were real, and they were something she could no longer ignore. One evening, as she stood at the balcony of her chamber staring at the stars, she felt a familiar presence behind her. It was Alex. He had been a constant part of her life for weeks now, always there, always patient, never demanding anything in return. It amazed her how he had remained by her side, offering her companionship without any expectation of affection. He didn't try to change her, didn't try to force her to feel something she wasn't ready for. Instead, he allowed her to come to him on her own terms. "Lyra," Alex said softly, his voice warm, "I've noticed the change in you. You're not the same person you were when I first met you." She turned to face him, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can see it in your eyes," he replied, stepping closer to her. "You've started to let go of the walls you built around yourself. You're not afraid to feel anymore. You're not afraid of what love might bring." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. His words were simple, but they cut through her with a clarity she hadn't expected. She hadn't realized just how much she had been holding on to, how much she had been afraid of letting go. But now, standing there in the quiet of the night, with Alex, she realized that she was ready to take the next step. She was ready to let herself feel, to embrace the love she had been so terrified of. For the first time, Lyra didn't feel like she was losing control. She didn't feel weak. She felt free. The weight she had carried for so long, the weight of her duty, her responsibilities, her fear of vulnerability, was slowly lifting. And in its place was something new, something that felt right. "I never thought I'd feel this way," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I never thought I'd let someone in. I thought I was strong enough to do everything on my own." Alex reached out and gently touched her arm, his touch warm and reassuring. "You don't have to do it all alone, Lyra. Strength isn't about pushing everyone away. It's about knowing when to let people in, when to trust them. I've always believed in you, from the moment I met you." Lyra closed her eyes, taking in a deep breath. She had spent so many years thinking that love was a weakness, that it would make her vulnerable to attack, to disappointment. But now, with Alex standing before her, she realized that love wasn't something to be feared. It was something to be cherished, something that could make her stronger, not weaker. "I'm scared," Lyra whispered, the words slipping from her lips before she could stop them. "I'm scared of what this means for me, for my future." Alex smiled gently, his eyes full of warmth and understanding. "I know you're scared, but you don't have to be. You don't have to have all the answers right now, just take it one step at a time. I'm not going anywhere." Her heart fluttered in her chest at his words. For the first time, she realized that she wasn't alone. She didn't have to carry the weight of the universe on her shoulders. There was someone by her side, someone who cared about her, who believed in her. And that realization brought a sense of peace that she had never known before. As the days turned into weeks, Lyra and Alex's bond grew stronger. They spent more time together, talking, laughing, and sharing moments of quiet companionship. Lyra found herself looking forward to their time together, to the simple comfort of his presence. For the first time, she allowed herself to be vulnerable with him, to share her fears, her hopes, and her dreams. And with each passing day, She felt a little bit lighter, a little bit freer. But it wasn't just the emotional connection that changed. Lyra found herself becoming a better leader as well. The more she allowed herself to open up, the more she realized that she didn't have to sacrifice her strength to show her humanity. In fact, embracing love and connection made her a more compassionate, more effective leader. She became more attuned to the needs of her people, more empathetic to their struggles, and more willing to fight for the future they all shared. One day, as they sat together in the royal garden, Lyra looked at Alex with a sense of awe. She had come so far from the cold, distant princess she had once been. She had faced her fears, embraced the love she had long denied, and allowed herself to be transformed by it. "You've changed me, Alex," she said softly. "I never thought I could be this person. I never thought I could let someone in, let myself feel, but here I am." Alex smiled, his eyes filled with affection. "You've always had the strength within you, Lyra. I just helped you see it. You don't need to be afraid of love anymore." And for the first time, Lyra truly believed it. She had been afraid of love, afraid of vulnerability, afraid of what it would mean for her future. But now she realized that love was not something to be feared. It was the very thing that had brought her peace, strength, and clarity. As she looked into Alex's eyes, she knew that their journey together was just beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. With love by her side, Lyra was ready to face whatever the future held. And in that moment, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for Alex, but for the unexpected change he had brought into her life, a change that had set her free.